Good evening and welcome to Outside the Box, edition 326 for October 11th, 2014. I'm Alex Ansary. Thank you for tuning in tonight, this morning, this afternoon, whatever time, whatever planet you may be watching this episode on. Tonight we're going to be focusing on society. There's a number of different videos we'll be playing, and I'll be discussing some of the content in those videos and how this relates to Portland. But before we do that, let's go ahead and play the first video without sound. Give you a quick update on my my adventure with the micro camper, parking it around town. And for those that don't know, about a month ago I built a micro camper, also known as a teardrop camper, right here in Portland, Oregon, specifically in North Portland. This video here was shot in the Northwest District, or part of town, right off of 26th and Nikolai. And I've been living in this particular piece of transportation, which is on a Harbor Freight trailer, for about a month, and it's still a project that is in development. I've been chronicling most of the trials and triumphs and challenges and other aspects on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/AlexAnsary. And it's been quite an adventure coming back to Portland in March, living in my truck for many months, and then graduating to something like this and now being prepared for winter. I've got the thing insulated. I've got a little Mr. Buddy propane heater. I've got about 100 watts of solar. And even though my computer died recently, thanks to my friend Grant, who lives in Southeast Portland, that is being repaired. And hopefully that will be working in the next couple of weeks. And I'll incrementally be making more videos and doing more news reports, commentary on current events inside this tiny, tiny home on wheels. And so it's been quite an adventure. Okay, that's all we're going to show on that. And by the way, that YouTube channel again is youtube.com/AlexAnsary. Now, without any more time going into any other topics, what we're about to play for you is an interview between Alfred Weber and Mark Passio. Mark Passio's website is whatonearthishappening.com. There's a number of different lectures that he's made over the years, and some of the things that he talks about directly relates to some of the things that are discussed here on Outside the Box TV. What we're going to do is play a clip from this interview, several in fact, and we'll be back and discuss how this relates to our world today, in fact, even our city today, society today, in the new, real Portlandia. We'll be back.
Than the self, and as such, since the self is essentially, or the ego is essentially the god of this quote-unquote religion, self-preservation becomes its highest aspiration, its highest goal, its highest law. The survival of the physical being, the survival of the body, the survival of the ego is put on a pedestal above all else. So it doesn't make a difference what you have to do to ensure that survival. It doesn't make a difference what you have to do to ensure your current level of social status either. You can step on people that are below you. You can be as ruthless as possible. Compassion doesn't really have to enter into the picture in any way whatsoever, and is generally even frowned upon in many cases. It's cold-bloodedness. It's dog-eat-dog worldview, and you have to come out on top regardless of what you have to do that. That's the first tenet.
I just want to make a
is
comment.
Essentially the worship of the self and self-preservation.
Mark Passio is discussing what is real satanic philosophy, just to provide the viewers with some context. That's what he's discussing.
Do what you have
what
to
is
do to
real
get ahead,
satanic ideology, and how does it fit into our society today? How is it playing out?
And if you just take that first overarching tenet and you look at the world around us, it could be a very easy extrapolation to just make the realization that the world is in a satanic mindset from the very, very first tenet. Most people of the world think like this because this is an extension of what you might call social Darwinism, or what you would call social Darwinism. So that's actually one of its later tenets, which I'll get to in a moment. But the second tenet of the satanic ideology is moral relativism. A very, very, very dangerous proposition, a dangerous ideology, a dangerous belief system. What moral relativism postulates is that there is no such thing as objective right and wrong. Right and wrong, as a moral relativist would have people believe, are simply, as a moral relativist would state, constructs of the human mind. They don't exist in any form in nature. They're not objective. They cannot be objectively measured. They're not objective standards in any way. And essentially, man gets to choose and decide what is right for himself and what is wrong for himself. So if something that benefits me greatly harms many, many other people, that's good. That's a good thing, because I can only look at right and wrong as relative. It doesn't make a difference whether somebody else's rights are being trounced. It doesn't make a difference whether somebody else's freedom is being destroyed. If I'm making out like a bandit in a certain situation, then that's fine and that's good and that should continue. This is how a moral relativist really sees things. It's no objective standard for ethics whatsoever, and there's no real objective difference between right and wrong to a moral relativist. That's the second basic tenet of Satanism, and you could see how it goes hand in hand with the ideology of self-preservation first and above all else, including ethics. The third major tenet, as I briefly alluded to, is social Darwinism. This is an extension of the macrobiological Darwinian evolutionary theory put forth by Charles Darwin, and then basically grafted onto by the Daltons and other cultural and social engineers and eugenicists of his day, and brought into the human social realm in the form of social Darwinism, which essentially postulates that people get to the positions of power that they get to because they are our genetic betters, that they're somehow our genetic superiors, and therefore, the most ruthless and the ones who have the genetic makeup that it takes to get to the top strata of society are just better, and nature has somehow socially, chosen them, and it has exercised, adaptation, to basically put them in the positions that they need to be in, and they should basically get to rule the roost. The most vicious, the most ruthless. That's kind of like survival of the fittest in the animal kingdom. Well, we're taking that into the social realm, and we're applying the dictum of survival of the absolute most ruthless, and they come out on top, and that somehow that is fine and it should be that way, and there's no ethical considerations that even need to be looked at or measured when it comes to that belief system. That's social Darwinism, and you could see many people in the corporate world have this kind of an ideology. Many people throughout society believe this. So again, you just look at these tenets, these three basic tenets so far, and you see a vast swath of the population actually is engaged in satanic thinking.
We're just going to hit pause. We're going to go back to that in a minute. So this is Mark Passio from the website whatonearthishappening.com. He's got many podcasts, like I said, many lectures. And I want to take what he's saying and apply it to what we're looking at now in our modern society and our own backyard. And there's a lot of things that I have to say. There's a lot of things that come to mind. There's a lot of things that I hear in Mark Passio's work that seem to echo some of the things that I'm also saying, but it gets far more in depth. I mean, he has some lectures that go on for 6 hours. But there is some confusion in our society today, and I want to make this point. People have confused physical pleasure with a spiritual experience. This is very prolific in this particular day and age. It's very prolific in Portland, Oregon. You see it when you're on Hawthorne. You see it when you're on Belmont. You see it when you're on Alberta Street. You have a lot of people that are fronting with a mask that are here at this time that do not seem to show normal, healthy, human empathy in regards to the suffering of others. And now we are seeing it play out. It takes a special kind of person, a special kind of entity, to have no feelings or remorse whatsoever for people that have nowhere to live whatsoever, nothing but the streets. It takes a special kind of person. And when you see materialism worshipped, when you see that elevated far above the value of a human life, we're in a whole new terrain. Now, it's not to say that this is new, or this is a new concept, or that this is something that's limited to Portland. There are people that watch this show and shows like this all throughout the world. And as I've said several times now since coming back to Portland, Portland, Oregon is a microcosm for a much larger situation or system or macrocosm. It's a microcosm of the macrocosm. There are so many aspects of good and evil that you can find in our own backyard. And what is the point of me saying this to you tonight? There is opportunity here in Portland if you are a lost, suffering soul, and my, oh my, throughout time, are there many lost souls that have called Portland home at some point in time? This is a place where people can decide whether they're going to achieve their dreams or reach for their dreams, to stroke their own creative genius within, to become the person that they actually are, to work with the powerful energies that are here in a mindful way, or they can become another person that's lost in the abyss, in the urban blight, as we rush back and forth. They can, unfortunately, in some situations, become their environment or let their environment shape them. All the people competing for resources, for fewer and fewer jobs, that affects the whole, and I would say creates a certain amount of psychic pollution. We're out of balance with nature, and there's no denying that. And what's upsetting is when truthful people, people that seek to speak the truth and hear the truth, when they hear this disinformation, that we are oh so conscious and oh so progressive and oh so loving and oh so resistant against authority, and we see the real world that's playing out. The real racism in a world where people will lie and accuse people of being racist when they aren't racist. Say, for example, someone doesn't buy something that the president is pushing, or someone doesn't support the president. The mainstream media, MSNBC, mainstream Democrats, that I don't feel are doing much to really fight genuine racism, especially when you look at millions dead in the Middle East and Afghanistan and Iraq, and you look at Syria, you look at Gaza, you look at those that support Israel. How can they say that they're against racism when there are so many atrocities being perpetrated today at the hands of not only the U.S. military, but Western governments as a whole, as well as Eastern governments, Russia, China, other governments? They suppress ethnic minorities in their own populations, and we should speak against it all without having preferences for any of the nation states, in my opinion. Fighting against injustice, fighting against real forms of racism. You could even say genocide. It's happening now with all different types of technology, unfortunately being developed in our own backyard. We have drone companies right off within 45 minutes of Portland and closer. We have other corporations that call the Portland area home, but this is so much about a larger picture than Portland. But many of the themes that Mark Passio, who lives in Philadelphia, many of the themes that he's discussing are very much things that you can apply to Portland as we ask ourselves, what type of world do we want to live in? What type of people do we want to be? Do we just simply want to conform and play with our iPhone 666 and live our lives in a hamster wheel, only focusing on what's on our face? How does that bring happiness? How does that bring a real sense of security when you know that those moments of happiness are fleeting, are temporary? All right, Bill, let's go ahead and go back to the video. And we will be back in just a few minutes to commentate on that.
I don't want to look at everything as because they've already essentially gotten people to accept a covert and soft form of slavery as the status quo, the way things are, and that they think that they could, most people think that it can't be changed and it's just the way things always have been and always will be. I don't necessarily think that it means it's doom and gloom and always going to get darker and darker and darker until, you know, humanity destroys itself or is permanently, openly enslaved. I think it can go that way. You know, if enough people continue to be willfully ignorant, it can go in that direction. I'm not saying it will, but it can go to our worst nightmare. And I also look at it like we're not at the point where it's necessarily going to be paradise on earth, where every single individual is going to suddenly awaken and have a sort of Satori moment of enlightenment and, you know, treat each other, you know, as they would treat themselves, according to the golden rule principle, where just simply stop doing violence to their fellow man when they have no right to enact that violence against them, and not stop doing violence to all beings, really, mankind and other species as well. I think we're somewhere in this uncomfortable, punctuated state of equilibrium slavery is where we're at now. Covert slavery that is kept that way, kept covert, because the ruling class doesn't have enough fully, overtly going for them to just completely externalize their hierarchy, as many of them want to do, and take everything outwardly and just say, we're the ruling class, we are your gods, and come right out with it and say, yeah, you are our cattle, you are our slaves, and there's nothing you could do about it. They're not at the point where they can or are ready to do that. But nor do I see it at the point where other people are at the point where they're completely saying no to this global slavery hierarchical structure. There are so many people, literally there's billions of people on this planet who give their ideological support for violence and slavery every day. Every person who agrees that government should even exist is giving ideological support for slavery. Everybody who believes that police institutions should exist, everybody that believes that military institutions should exist, are giving their ideological position away and saying, I support violence, I support the ideological position of slavery and perpetual warfare and ruling class and man getting to make up what laws are, man getting to essentially decide, what right and wrong are, and
So think about the point that he's making. How many people in the Portland area have supported suppression, government, presidents that have authorized drone attacks, banker bailouts? How many people are consuming transnational corporate goods on a regular basis, getting a new cell phone every single year? Those cell phones, the lithium in those cell phones, they say they discovered just lithium just a few years ago in Afghanistan. Of course, they may have discovered lithium and other things in Afghanistan a very long time ago, but it came out a couple years ago, oh, by the way, there's lithium in Afghanistan. And so we have conflict minerals, not just conflict diamonds, conflict minerals to basically quench, it barely even quenches, it barely even satisfies that thirst for consumer products. So if we want to talk about being responsible, it's being responsible for the people that we voted for. But I don't want to say we, including me, because I did not vote for any of the lesser evils in any of the elections at any time whatsoever. But we live in a world where people want to say, well, did you vote? What they're really saying is, are you participating in the slave system? You have to participate. You have to pick between the slave. No, I don't. And there's actually something wrong with co-signing your agreement that it's okay only having two choices. That's not right. It's never been okay. It wasn't okay 10 years ago. It certainly wasn't okay the last couple. You know what's worse about the last few years? You've had all the information you need to find out who these people work for. You've had the information. You have no excuse. You have no excuse. No one has any excuse any longer. It's like we are in a free will virtual spiritual video game where it's like choose your own adventure, choose where your soul goes from here on out based on your own actions. Do you want to stand behind an empire of death and destruction when you know that it is such? Or are you going to actually say something against it while there's time, regardless of what happens to us, but because there are future generations after us that we have to look after? We can't just be consumed with our own self-gain. And that was the point he was making in the first clip. That amounts to real satanic ideology. It isn't about devil worship. It isn't about worshiping Satan or some other name. It's about the tenets. Only being focused on your own personal gain. Attacking other people that want to unlock the doors that hold back the secrets. Putting them down. Calling them conspiracy theorists. Calling them New Age. When in fact, basic spiritual concepts and teachings go back thousands of years. New Age stuff relates to things like Ashtar Command, rapturing us up for the Pleiadians, coming to save us. That's New Age theology. which I do not subscribe to. Spiritual teachings and spiritual concepts, things like natural law, universal law, those things are timeless. Now, we still have that clip. We're going to go back to that clip and
it's
listen to
the
it for a few more
ideology of
minutes.
order following. You know, I'm going to eventually do a new presentation coming up in the future at some point. I've basically started working on an outline of it that's going to talk about nothing but the dynamic of order following as the most significant evil state of mind that has ever existed and continues to exist. So, I mean, for me, to take a balanced approach, and an approach that I would look at as realistic, not overly pessimistic, overly dark, overly saying, oh no, it's all going in this direction downhill and nothing can be done. I don't think that's my approach. Nor saying God is totally on our side and everybody's consciousness is elevating at unbelievable rapid acceleration rates, and there's going to be paradise here next week, and we're going to be in a extrastellar civilization and totally enlightened state of consciousness next month.
Right.
I
Bill,
don't think that way
pause
either.
one more time.
I think we're in a really punctuated struggle that is going to last a long time.
Okay, so that's another point that we should pause and reflect on. We're not going to another galaxy. Ladies and gentlemen, Ashtar Command is not here to give you a free ride off the planet while everybody else is left behind. Now be honest with me. How many of your friends, how many of your girlfriends, how many of your boyfriends, how many of your mothers, how many of your fathers, how many of your daughters, how many of your sons have been peddling this disinformation for decades? This disinformation that we are at the dawn of a new age. All of our problems are going to be fixed for us. You don't have to talk about 9/11. You don't need to be aware of what's going on with our government. We're in a new age. We're the chosen ones. We're the ones we've been waiting for. Hoo-yah! And it's like, at what point does that light bulb go off above society where people go, my Lord, we've been conned. We've been conned by a disinformation ideology that has resulted in countless numbers of human beings standing down while others are slaughtered by the tanks of life. And it's happening all around you. But only now, you have no excuse. You have no excuse. You no longer have the luxury of excuse. There's all these different excuses why people don't get involved. Oh, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to end up on their list. We need to discuss that. And end up murder down the line. I'm going to play it safe over here, support the system, watch what I say, and everything is going to be all right. First of all, I don't think anyone's soul is going to be all right if they live their entire life in the flesh, in this temporary physical spacesuit, in this spiritual biological video game, just scrambling like a hamster, just going day by day, only worried about themselves, hitting whatever comes their way in traffic. Maybe they're a biker, and they have no remorse maybe for the people they crash into or the pedestrians they scare nearly run over. And they're just about getting to their own particular destination without actual regard for the people around them. See, in these modern cities, in this modern Babylon that we're trapped in right now, we can see the worst of humanity as well as the best of humanity, but we can see it and we can choose what we participate in, what we support, what we're against. And we can understand that there is the power of saying no. There's the power of saying no to a rapist, to someone attacking you, to someone attacking someone that you love. And that's not being negative when you're actually being there and putting your own life at risk to save someone else. We live in a society today where we read more and more about some tragic thing taking place in our society, some woman raped, some person mugged, and a whole crowd of people watching, and doing absolutely nothing. Out of habit, when I'm in so-called regular society and I see someone who is unraveling mentally approach someone and start screaming at them, I will watch the situation to see if it progresses. I watched a skateboarder walk up to someone that was, he had his shirt off and he was doing the whole, I need to tell you my whole life story. I'm having a breakdown. God almighty, please stop so I can yell at you. And it was on 39th and Laurelhurst, 39th and Stark at the park. And I'm just being aware of what's going on, because moments before that, a woman just went running up the hill. Like, I'm wondering what scared her. But I also may note she's running from something that frightens her without even warning me or anyone else. Hey, there's a maniac down the way yelling his head off. You might want to be careful. In Portland right now, you have all this programming. You have all these problems. You have all these fears that have been imported into our city, just like the bread, just like the frozen pizzas, just like the beer, just like the cigarettes. All these problems from all over the planet have been now imported into the Portland area. No one's moving to Portland and stroking or touching a magic rock and getting healed. That's not happening anywhere. No one's pulling a sword out of a stone and turning into King Arthur. No one is reaching enlightenment and discovering the very mysteries of the universe and what we really are, where we came from, where we're going. That's happening for no one as a result of simply moving to Portland. If that's happening, it's because they're doing the necessary work, the personal work. They're being responsible to make that happen, to expand their consciousness so they can interpret the ideas and understand who they really are, to remember who we are. The name of the song that we'll be playing in just a little bit from Gareth Ike, son of David Ike. But let me just pause now. And Bill, let's go ahead and go back to that video.
Possibly, if we don't destroy ourselves in this process. But if you just look at the dynamic realistically, I try to look at it realistically in a numbers sense. I do believe numbers are going to be required to tilt this dynamic one way or another. And just think about the numbers of order followers that exist worldwide. The amount of people who are told what they should do and do it without actually ever questioning that entire paradigm or way of existence, that way of life. How many people actually say on a day-to-day basis in taking the next action that they're going to take, I have thought this action fully through and know fully, because I know within myself the actual difference between right and wrong behavior, and I am myself willfully choosing right action over wrong action in this instance because I fully know the difference between those two dynamics. I would say it's a paltry handful of people worldwide. If I really were honest, and in a very honest dynamic, thinking about that, how many people really truly know deep down inside themselves the moral difference between right and wrong behavior, fully know it, not a belief system, know it fully, and can say, I am following no one else's orders or even suggestions. I know it for myself. Knowledge, it's not my belief system. You either know the difference between right and wrong, or you do not know the difference between right and wrong. And what I'm saying is the vast majority of human beings do not know the difference between right and wrong, sadly, which is why we're in this state of punctuated slavery that is possibly going to last millennia if we're not, if we don't really radically, truly awaken our consciousness to that difference between right and wrong action. So just think about the number of police that exist in the world, okay? You look at how many police exist on a police force in any given city, and then just extend that, and you think every single settlement of people on the surface of this planet, just about, not quite every, but just about every single settlement of people, no matter how small the town, village, hamlet, up to a major metropolitan city, in many cases has multiple police forces operating within that vicinity, within that territory. So you're talking about hundreds of millions of people who are direct followers of orders just right then and there, that constitute a standing army, in many cases a militarized standing army living amongst their populations. Then you extend that to...
And so when you travel throughout the United States, you see on the local level complete control of a population. And in some cases, it's very, very sad to witness. I see all these people with their cell phones, they're making love to their cell phones while they're driving. In this day and age, even though in some places they've, and I'm not all about, people being pulled over. I think that's wrong. I got a $300 ticket when I was in Texas for just checking a message on a phone. But I'm conflicted on that one. I don't want to pay a $300 ticket. To me, that was robbery because I did not harm anyone else, even if that small town in Texas, Lake Dallas, felt that it was their right to basically steal or remove from my hands $300 and some odd dollars. And so this is thievery. We see on the local level all these different forms of thievery and theft in small towns throughout America, and not just America. And it's authorized. And so you're talking about a consensus reality where the numbers count. He's talking about the numbers. What are the numbers in these towns doing? Are they protesting together? Are they organizing? Are they voting in people in city council that are going to represent the people's views? Do the people have any views? How often do we see in society people not wanting to hear about these things? They don't want to hear about the police state. They don't want to hear about the problems in Syria. They don't want to be bothered with all this news about what our government's involved in and what they're manufacturing. And by the way, the U.S. is currently manufacturing an Ebola scare at this time. People are getting conditioned to the idea that maybe at one point we'll be quarantined in some section of our country. And so this is actually building to something, just like the swine flu scare was building to something. No, people don't want to be bothered with things like that. Not when they have all these things to be consumed with that involve their own immediate pleasures that deal with themselves and them alone. So we see this global problem that involves this narcissistic, sociopathic personality type that it seems is being created from the environmental effects of the modern society, of the modern world, of the modern Babylon. And Portland, Oregon is no different. When you have all this mass culture, mass pop culture, this mass way of thinking directly injected into our society. You watch the local news. It doesn't matter whether it's Coin 6 or KGW or Coin 2, KATU or OPB. OPB's propaganda hour, the PBS propaganda hour, where they give you the official reason of why we're going to stay in the Middle East for all time, no debate, just forget about it. And you see from the local media to the national media to OPB, the emphasis on propaganda, on bright lights of really intense colors. Now that everything is HD, I don't watch TV, but what I notice is the bright colors. And people get mesmerized because of the bright colors and the graphics, and it's rotating. I saw this stuff years and years ago. A lot of it exploded on the screen, especially after 9/11. America under attack. Watch the rotating globe. You're getting dizzier. You're getting dizzier. CNN. Oh, you're getting sleepier and sleepier. And now it's like, holy crap. This is off the charts. We're in a whole new terrain where some of the subliminal programming and messages that are being utilized aren't being detected as easily as they used to be when they simply had the flicker rate. So things are getting far more complicated. Okay, we are running low on time. Well, we have 25 minutes left, but there's more videos to get to. So to preface this next one, and this is how I've been treated, even by some family members, even by many parts of this community. When you speak about something that somebody doesn't want to hear, it's viewed as negative. And if you're presenting information that disturbs people, you are a negative individual. And so superstitious beliefs kick in. If you were to know of something, you might draw it to you. A complete misinterpretation of the law of attraction. And so there's some aspects of the law of attraction that are absolutely real. When I think about certain things, sometimes they focus, they manifest when something's focused upon. Or you might think about something or someone, and they may call you. There's many examples of synchronicity, and in my life I've seen so many forms of synchronicity that's led me to believe that if I keep doing the right thing, I don't need to be preoccupied with my life ending before it's time. What will be, will be. I've seen enough synchronicity in my life to show me that the universe has had my back in dire situations. Now, having an understanding of synchronicity is very different than the mainstream Kool-Aid version of the law of attraction, which states that basically if something bad happens to you, you attracted it to you and you basically deserve it in some way. And there are some people that choose to look at life through that apathetic lens. Oh, they deserved it. And it's not very different than blaming some woman who's raped. Oh, she was dressed the wrong way in the wrong neighborhood. She deserved it. Now, most of you don't agree that that's an okay way to look at a situation like that. Some of you do, though, hold those views. And there are some ways, some things that people do that aren't the most intelligent, but that's different than blaming the victim. Side topic. But the point here is that we live in a world, we live in a culture where if someone's homeless, if something bad happens to someone, people just assume it's their karma. And they use that as an excuse for their own non-involvement with the situation. At this point, we're going to play an excerpt from Bill. We'll get that clip ready from Mark Passio's talk. This was back in April of 2013 from the Free Your Mind Conference. The name of the lecture is New Age BS, and you can find this in full on YouTube. He actually even has a 6-hour lecture which expands upon these very ideas. Go ahead.
With no outlet, which retards the true awakening process. I'm going to cover 10 New Age deceptions here tonight. And then, of course, as has been stated so eloquently earlier in the conference, never offer criticism without a solution. Never present the problem without presenting the solution. So I will present 10 New Age deceptions along with 10 New Age corrections to go back to the original spirit of how these teachings have been perverted, twisted, and misunderstood over thousands of years. The first deception is, and we're all familiar with this one, how it's utilized in the New Age movement. Ignore the negative. Don't look at that. Don't pay attention to that. That's bad. That's evil. That makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't need to hear about that. Many New Age deceivers want to convince you that you, quote unquote, give power to something that is harmful simply by putting your attention upon it and becoming aware of its existence. Therefore, you should never pay attention to or talk about anything that is, quote-unquote, negative. Well, there is no such thing as negative when it comes to awareness. You're either aware of it or you're not aware of it. Okay? You're either in knowledge, in possession of knowledge, or you're ignoring it. So it's a question of knowledge or ignorance. So, ignore the negative is New Age deception number 1. And this is what it looks like. Putting your head in the sand. And to put your head in the sand, you have to be on your knees with your ass in the air. Okay? Just keep that in mind. To put your head in the sand, you need to be on your knees with your ass in the air. Look, let me get my... sorry, I'm just going to pop for a minute when I plug this in. And let me plug it in. Sorry about that. Let me go back to that slide. And if this is the attitude that we take in life, I have to call bullshit on it, okay? This is the bullshit button. You'll be seeing a lot of it in the presentation. New Age correction to ignoring the negative. Seeing the negative for what it actually is creates the ability to steel oneself against its harmful effects, and possibly even to be able to avert those effects entirely. When we see what's coming with open eyes, we can take measures against it. You know, we can protect ourselves. We can steel ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually against the coming deluge, okay? Refusing to look...
Okay, so if you've shopped at New Seasons anytime in the recent past, okay, and you think these ideas are negative, but you think you're well conscious and you're spending that extra money on meat that you know hasn't gone through the torture process that the meat's gone through at Safeway and Kroger, you're being negative. Have any of you seen the doctor recently, or consulted a naturopathic, or went to Google and said, how do I deal with my yeast infection? How do I deal with my period that's been going on for several months without it stopping? You're being negative. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're checking into your health. You feel some lump on your breast, you think you might want to check it out, you think you might want to start eating a diet that's rich in nutrients and things that might flush out cancer. You're being proactive. It's no different when we are looking at news of the day, whether it's my show or someone else's show, and we're looking at different aspects of society. So when people ask, what's the solution? Some solutions don't exist for a more complex situation that we're in. And to demand that and to label someone negative, well, we're actually talking about full-fledged bully behavior and really nothing short of psychic attack or psychic warfare. When you engage in sending hate or negativity to either myself or someone else because information's presented that you don't agree with, or because it makes you feel bad, or because it makes you feel like your life isn't as stable as you thought all these years, you are engaging in negative behavior by putting yourself in that caustic point of view and perspective. Even the very sending of a thought of anger towards me this very second that I'm actually bringing up this issue. Remember, everything that you do send back comes back to you according to the philosophy that a lot of people hold. And there are basic spiritual philosophies that we do not have to call New Age, that have nothing to do with channeling, that have nothing to do with bullying or putting down people, that are aware of current events. There's nowhere in the writings of the past and the great past of the masters, whether we're talking about Jesus, Krishna, Lao Tzu, there's nowhere there where they are putting people down that are trying to bring awareness towards the suffering of others on the planet. You can't find it anywhere. You can find dogmatic thinking patterns in religion, and many religions throughout the world that have been rewritten and designed to control populations, to control women, to control men. But the philosophies of the world throughout time, you don't have long rants about how negative people are that were aware in their day and time. They don't exist. This is very much a current manifestation. This is very much a current expression of mental illness. There's no written writings of the past that at a certain point we would all reach a collective shift in consciousness and we wouldn't have to be concerned anymore with paying our rent or protecting ourselves or being aware of environmental risk and things like that. And by the way, how many people love to focus on all these environmental scares, the world's ending, global warming, but they're calling people negative that are aware of real people being really hurt by real people today. Okay, a politician authorizes a drone strike, 20 people murdered at a wedding. That is racism. I don't care if it's a black president. You're talking about master white Nazi ideology that's behind the idea of invading brown countries and decimating everyone. You can use a Mexican president too while you're at it. It doesn't matter. The ideology behind it is hatred. So if you're silent about that, but you're concerned about your own physical health and that lump under the titty, or you're concerned about your own personal health care, but not others' right to live. Oh, you're okay with abortion, but you don't want to step in the way of these drone attacks and bring light to these things that have happened in all these countries for all those years. That is satanic. It's not about worshiping the devil. We are in a full-fledged satanic city where the values people hold is owning themselves. And anyone trying to raise issue about these things is the enemy. And I have been made the enemy by some of you simply because of the things that I speak of. And we all know this is the truth. We all know this is the truth. You and I both know this. We know where this is coming from. The unpopularity of the message itself. And that is why this is being given extra focus tonight. And it's okay, I'm fine with it. I've had to live my whole life viewing life differently. And I have seen how my family's treated me, and I have seen how I have crawled out of dangerous situations, and I feel my compassion for others, and I'm not going to be made guilty about it any longer. Okay? That is psychotic behavior, and that is the world that we live in today. So no one should be wondering how we're getting to the world that we're getting to now, with the rise of machines and the rise of global control and the rise of global weapons, powerful weapons that can decimate cities with a push of a button. There should be no mystery as to what is happening here and where this is going and the seriousness of the plight that all of humanity is in at this moment. Now, I don't know what video is next. Is it the song? In the next video, we have a number of videos following this one. It may be the one where I megaphoned a couple days ago. We don't have a lot of time left. We'll go ahead and play a minute of it.
The biggest misnomer that people have is that people that protest wars, invasions, rapes, hate America. How psychotic is that? How psychotic is that?
A couple of days ago, this is off of MLK and Burnside.
But we know that what goes around comes around. So if you're going to be running around, pillaging, burning villages alive, torturing people in front of their parents, oh my God, what's going to be the future of America when they plan the destruction of this country? What will become in America in 10, 20, 30, 40 years? You already know you live in a police state. You already know that in 2008 and 2009, at least hopefully, that we saw the greatest bank robbery in the history of the United States. Only the bankers were doing the robbing. So we know that there's corruption here, systematic corruption, not only at the federal government level, but at the local level, at the city level. You might as well have the mob running City Hall with a big fake, ooh, we're so green and progressive mural. Might as well put a Starbucks logo on it. Might as well put a McDonald's logo on it. When man or woman hurts or maims man or woman, it is bad mojo. It is bad karma. And that's what the United States is going to deal with. Oh, we've got a nice little helicopter. I remember the year 2008 when the Navy Special Warfare Unit flew black helicopters over the city in an exercise. And there have been more and more of these martial law style exercises in the last couple of years. But now it's common to see the all-seeing eye.
It's common to read about drones over Portland.
Over the skies of Portland. And then we read more and more stories about drones over Portland. And then we read stories about drones being manufactured in our own backyard that kill people thousands of miles away from us. People we have never met, people we have never seen. We don't hate Portland. We don't hate America. We love you. We love Portland. We love the places we were born. We love the country we were born in, even if we don't love the dictators and the banks that are in charge of things and are in charge of conference, in charge of Congress and other governmental institutions. We care about our communities, and that's what this is about. We can reverse the damage. You can reverse the damage today. You can reverse any negative karma that you've attracted to yourself. If you're a warmonger and you've supported rape, murder, pillaging, you have bad karma that I believe you are attracting. And on a larger energetic construct, this city, yes, this city and this country is attracting a lot of karma that is yet to be returned to it. So change your ways if you can. If you can hear the sound of my voice, you can change your ways. I'm not here to tell you to go to Jesus. I'm not here to tell you not to go to Jesus. But there is something for you other than a cell phone. There is something for you other than an iPhone 666. There is something for you other than Dances with the Stars in the Afghan war. There is something for you other than a meal for $19.95. There is something for you other than just coming to Oregon from California and New York and visiting our wonderful parks and our wonderful places and helping to drive up the rent to where most of us can't afford to live here any longer and we're looking for the back door. I'm asking you to look inside your inner consciousness and understand that that which is in control of your government is involved in some highly satanic practices, and we're talking about mass murder, and I see you laughing, sir. I see you laughing, and that's what I'm talking about. You're shaking your head now, because you know I speak the truth, and arrogance is your only response. Arrogance is the only response the average person that I've met can ever show me. Is arrogance, is scoffery.
Do you ever riff on the idea that the we're going to use robotic drones over there, that they can build their own robots and use them here.
Yeah.
I heard you saying that's going to come back on us. That's a specific thing I think about.
And at the drone talk, they were bringing that up. That was about a month ago. They were getting that epiphany. So people are starting to have this epiphany. Wait a minute, we have killing drones out there in the world, over our skies, being made by some of the same companies that are murdering innocent men, women, and children. But they're telling you everything's fine. We're going to keep building up the police state. We're going to keep building more prisons. We're going to keep putting more of your kids in jail.
Let's skip forward about a minute.
Fine. Oh, we're going to keep starting wars with other countries, but everything's going to be fine. Your iPhone 6.
We got a lot to cover. Let's skip forward 1 minute on that, and then we'll come back and we'll play the other video as we go out.
And bomb this country from sunrise to sundown. The Nazis didn't lose the war, they just moved, and we stand against that Nazi ideology. And I saw that window roll up, and I know that I'm talking to someone that supports that ideology that I speak against. Otherwise, there would be nothing offensive about this message. So we all know the truth and where we stand. So I will give you, ma'am, the brief speech that I gave everybody else. Change your karma, let's change our ways. If we turn our back on the suffering of others, we may find ourselves also in a dangerous situation.
All right.
And
and that's the point. And there's more at my YouTube channel, but I want to skip forward and play that particular point. Now, in the United States, in the future, there's some declaration that a couple states are going to be merged into one, or some other declaration that everybody has to arrive at a certain spot in their major town and get a certain vaccine, or if some other declaration was handed out, you would see certain people resisting that declaration, or the draft, for example. You would see that. Now, if some people started to break away and you had some sort of a Bundy situation, not Ted Bundy, but more like the Bundy Ranch, and I think that was more of a shock test, a test to see who would actually show up at the Bundy Ranch and how social media would actually work in that situation as far as the networking for the people that would go down there and be supportive of the Bundys, just like Ed and Elaine Brown, who had their home taken from them where they didn't pay their property taxes back in 2008, 2009. That was another situation that some of you may have never heard about. But they're getting ready, shock testing, and preparing for these future situations down the line. And down the line, they would call someone or a group of people terrorists if they were violently resisting some form of tyranny. That's just how things work here in the United States. And with drones and drones above so many aspects of this country now, they would be able to find that group, and they would put enough propaganda out there on CNN and Fox News and MSNBC to where people would support some sort of violent action against innocent people because they're being called terrorists, because they're being smeared in the media. And this is how things are already working incrementally. More and more, they're comparing conspiracy theorists to ISIS. It's getting out of control. ISIS is using the root of my last name, by the way. If you Google Ansar al-Sharia, Ansar al-Islam, it's very disturbing stuff. And this is the type of stuff that gets people stopped when they're flying on a plane. All this information is so important, but people, when they're so busy telling themselves how wonderful they are and how everyone that's trying to bring light to certain issues, they're the enemy. This is a very sick society. Unfortunately, the mentally ill aren't necessarily the people walking around, sucking their thumb out in the street, talking to themselves, living the homeless experience. There are the people that are well adjusted to the society that have no problem with the things that are taking place. Mental illness is exploding right now in the society. The divide between man and woman is so great. It's probably the most unromantic times in all of human society and history. In all of human history, for sure. When you add technology into it, when you add television programming into it, when you add the iPhone into it, you know, the cover of Willamette Week was a picture of the modern, what some believe is the modern goddess, basically the modern urban earth woman with her cup of coffee and her cell phone, and that is all she needs. She doesn't need family. She doesn't need to be respected as a real woman who can show her real feminine attributes. The modern woman is in a situation where she's competing with men for fewer and fewer resources, for land they actually don't own, and wealth they will probably never pass on to their children. They're in a rat game. They're in a rat maze. And it's very sad to see its effect on the common Portland woman and the common Portland man. And there are so many eyes and ears out there that don't want me to talk about these issues, that think that everything is external to them, that there's no self-responsibility, but everything that was said on all those videos directly apply to the town that I was born into in the year 1980. And for some reason, I feel a need to speak about these things, and that's one of the main reasons I came back to this town. There's more than one reason. So to all those of you that think that, oh, if I don't like it here, I should go somewhere else, wherever we go, there we are. We are not meant to run from our problems, and neither are you, and that's what you're doing when you're attacking me. Last but not least, get outside that box of identifying yourself to be related to your own locale. There is something more about your true origins that is far greater than being a Portlander, or a Oregonian, or a New Yorker, or a Seattleite, or anything else whatsoever, or an American. Some of you have been indoctrinated into cult-like behavior and thinking most of your lives. Whether you've been in the military and you're a Marine and blah, 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 and la, 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 or whether you see yourself as a mainstream Christian who's going to a mainstream megachurch, who's viewing things through the lens of your pastor. This is all cult-like thinking where people find ways to dogmatically attack others as evil that don't believe in what they believe. But it's also important while you do that, that you recognize that there is pure evil in our society. There are systems of influence. There are evil aspects to the human personality where people hurt, they kill, and they torture other human beings, and they violate free will, and they steal. These are all evil attributes. I have people still to this day trying to downplay the existence of two different energies, or light and a dark, or an evil and a good. And while certain people subscribe to moral relativity, the idea that there is no good and there is no evil, violence is evil when it is inflicted towards innocent people. And it is happening all around us, and there are people that are sitting by silently while these things are taking place. We've run out of time. I've run out of breath. If there's any tips that you'd like to give me, news, otherwise, happening locally, alex_@hotmail.com. Any projects you'd like to inform me of, anywhere that you know of where I can park my vehicle. As you know, I'm home free, living in a tiny, tiny home on wheels. If you know of work that's available, if you need something done, I'm willing to do some volunteer work. It is fall. I thought about this last week. It's probably time that I do some work for free in the community. Maybe some of you have been watching for years and you're in a wheelchair and you need someone to come over and help you do some very basic things because you can't trust anyone on your block. You can email me, and if possible, I will help you do some very basic things. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. This is Garrick Ike, son of David Ike, with Remember Who You Are. Have a good night.
Take my eyes, but I still take to flight.